Here's everything you have to know about the daily high and low by session report on edgeful.com. So right now we're looking at YM. This is going to apply to Forex, crypto, and futures only. It's not going to apply to stocks because obviously stocks don't have the other sessions like Asia and London. So what does this report measure? It looks specifically at how often is price going to make the high of day and the low of day in each of these sessions. So we have the Asian, London, and New York sessions. You can see right here we have the overlap of Asia and New York, of Asia and London, and we have the London and New York overlap as well. So if we look here, let me clean this up. If we look here at any given day, let's look at this day today, actually. And I go to my market sessions indicator and I turn on my Tokyo, London, and New York. You can see here that the low of day today was made in Asia, in the Tokyo session, right over here. Now it's important to note that it's not measuring any price action outside earlier than the Asian range and after this New York close. If you want to customize the start and the end times of this, you can do that right over here. The default is just the standard times. But you can see that the high of day was made. The high of this day, right here, this daily candle, was made. It's actually not the daily candle, which is very important, because it's not considering this right here. That's super important. So if you look at the daily candle, it will have a low, this low, but this Asian range is not considering that low. The Asian session does not start. This was technically Globex. So the Asia made the low, London didn't do anything, and then New York made the high. Let's look at a couple other examples. In this case here, New York made the high, very slightly, but then the overlap, this is important. So the overlap of London and New York made the low of day. So that would fall into this category here. Let's look at a couple other examples. The overlap of, right over here, the overlap of London and New York made the high of day, and then the London, so you can see there's a very small little gap right here. London made, let me just zoom into that. Here's that little gap. London made the low on this day. So this is a way where you can frame your day. If you know that the high and low of day, or the extremes, are typically going to be made in the New York session, you can use this to understand the direction for price to go in today. Now, I know some people like to remove the daily or the overlaps. If you're going to do that, you can go to the customization here, change this to be 3 a.m. That's the end of the Asian session to end at 3. Change the London session to end at 9:30, and then now you can see that there is no overlap and that a lot of those highs and lows are going to migrate to the New York session, obviously. But now, in order to see how this actually looks on your charts, you need to double click here or just go to the settings on your market sessions indicator. Go change the end time of London to be 9:30, the end time of Asia to be 3. And then now you can see these indicators do not overlap, right? So you can see right here, there is no overlap between the two. So the high and the low can only be made in any of these sessions individually. So here's an example of the high being made in New York, the low being made in London, et cetera, et cetera. This is the way that you can remove each of the overlaps. And then I'm just going to reset this to be the standard because I want to show you the sub-reports as well. So I'm going to show you the sub-reports now, and I'm going to reset this. Okay, so if you look by weekday, this is going to allow you to filter for specific weekdays, obviously. And one thing that's really important to note about this is that every weekday behaves differently. If you trade only YM, or you trade only Euro USD, or only Bitcoin, or only NQ, it doesn't matter. You have to be able to adapt to the weekday. And that's not my opinion. The data shows it across the board. Look at any weekday. It is very important that you understand that weekday's behavior and personality. Now, if you go to the by candle, this is measuring the direction of the candle, which is super important. So in this case here, on this day, obviously, this is a bullish day. The daily candle in this case would be green. This allows you to filter for specific daily candles, red or green. And what's really crazy about this report is that if the daily candle's green, 96% of the time, the high of day is going to be made in New York. The low of day is going to be made in Asia. If you look at the red, it's, not as strongly flipped, but the low of day is going to be made in Asia, and the high of day is going to be made in Asia, and the low of day is going to be made in New York. So in this case, when price does something like this falls in line perfectly. Obviously, this is a green candle. 83% of the time, the low was made in Asia, which is correct. The high of day was made in New York, which is correct. And then now you can see, here's another great example. In this case, actually, London made the low right over here. New York made the high. And if we look at a couple other ones, here is New York making the high. The overlap in this case would have made the low. And you can see right over here, this New York made the low on a red. This would be a red day, obviously, because it closed down here. You can see London made the high, New York made the low. Here's another example. Asia made the high, New York made the low. In this case, New York made the high and the low, which is kind of crazy. But this is how you can filter for specific days. So let's say you're using the initial balance report, the opening candle continuation report, and some other maybe market session correlation, some of the other reports, and you see that you're expecting a green day. Now you can look at this and look at your other sessions. Let's just use today as an example. You can look at your other sessions to say, you know what? I'm expecting New York to make the high of day. And now price can continue higher or whatever it is, however you want to interpret it. The way that I like to look at this report specifically, is to give me a little bit of context on what is going on for this daily session, or this overall daily session. Where's price right now relative to Asian highs and lows, relative to London highs and lows, and where can I expect price to break out of based on that? If I know that if I'm expecting a very bearish day, I know typically, obviously based on the red daily candles, that the high of day is typically going to be made in that Asian session. And the low of day is going to be made in that New York session. So if I want to really get short, obviously this is a great example of price making a high of day here and then continuing to the downside and obviously being a red day. So play around with the customization on the times too. I know a lot of people like to change and remove the overlaps or whatever else. Totally up to you. There's no right way to do it. You can really extract a lot of value from this if you play around with it. This goes obviously across the board for any of the reports that we have. But if this video was helpful, please subscribe to the YouTube. There's a ton of information on there that will be very helpful to you. And if you have any questions, reach out to our support right over here. Appreciate your time. Have a good one.